We have experimented with the idea of how might we offer leveraging these tools in the Lake County community, recognizing that, you need some training. You wouldn't just want someone like me to take them out. And there's going to be some logistics involved. And I'm a firm believer in the carrot versus the stick. So in setting this up as a contest, if you will, to select the best lakes will probably bring us better results than banging on doors and begging lakes to participate with us. That said, maybe we feel that from January to X amount of time, we just need to build up that core group that knows how to use the tools and the equipment. And we want to experiment with how quickly can we check it in and out, or, what does it really look and feel like? Because it would surely be bad to invite 5 lakes and learn that we only really can support 3 or something like that. Or maybe we could support 10. So I would love to step in and get involved when it's time to market this to the community. And I would love to find lakes that represent something that we're interested in and would come forward with the right number of engaged people that are also willing to make the results transparent. And one idea is just to focus on a watershed from start to finish. Another is just to open it up to anybody and whoever really wants to, or perhaps we just say this is a year of experimenting ourselves or a partial year. So those are where my thoughts are. I don't know if we have all the answers yet to go forward with honing a launch program yet. So I'm curious to hear, Paul, what you have in mind to get this core group together. And I don't know if you're thinking we would pair a core group that's trained member with a member lake, and they would always work in tandem, or we imagine that we would train up some new people for these engaged lakes that aren't part of the group today. So however we do it, I think at the end of the day, we'd love to see these instruments, maybe not to. I know, Jim, you're the expert in doing very deep and broad measurement. I think we're also trying to experiment with, recognizing that not everybody might have that time and expertise. Is there some middle ground that we could strike that still allows value? And maybe if some troubling early results are there, more thorough testing comes in. I don't know. I'm not the expert in this, so
yeah,
I'm on the people side.
Becky, remember that one of the things that I have as my goal is to try and get the volunteer lake monitoring program back. And that involves just a single type of measurement with a Secchi disc.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah.
And what that means is that almost all of the lake communities have the possibility of doing that.
Yeah.
And Paul, I have some concern. I've gone through the videos that you have presented, and I have lots of experience, painful, some painful, some good, with the use of electronic meters and that. And the explanations from the Xylem folks are pretty detailed. There's a good deal involved in calibrating and maintaining the meters.
Right.
As I've gone through the videos, I have a substantial number of questions. And the whole thing that I see in terms of having the equipment is trying to make it easier and simpler to have access to it for people to use it. And to do that's an educational process. The videos are helpful. There is an awful lot of technical jargon in the videos. There is clearly pretty much, especially with somebody like Paul that has the background for this stuff, that's involved in introducing the equipment to people that might be interested in using it on their lake. So there's in a word, there's a large education process that has to go forward with it.
The way I kind of see it is, if we could get a group of 5 or 6 or 7 people with lab experience, and chemists or med techs or teachers that taught science classes and did laboratory work, And that group would be responsible for calibrations, quality assurance, ordering supplies, and training. And the training, I think, would be in a couple of parts. I think the first part would be asking the citizen scientists to watch the videos, or maybe some of the videos from that Xylem made, and then also read this booklet that Jim supplied, which is
Good book, Paul.
which is not copyrighted. It's available to anyone so that they can understand what they're going to do with the data. Why is it important to take this data? And then the instruments, they're really very, very good instruments. So especially I like the chlorophyll A, and it also does some fluorescence ratios that can lead to some kind of measurement of a potential toxic HAB. And that's that's on the Pro DSS meter. We have dissolved oxygen, and we have, and what as Jim has explained to me, and we have pH. And so those two things oscillate throughout the day. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but my understanding is they oscillate substantially due to the light during the day and the absence of light at night, and the photosynthesis during the day producing oxygen, raising the DO level during the day, and it crashes at night and oscillates. So if you take a DO reading at sunrise every day, then you can compare those. But if you take some readings at sunrise and some in the middle of the afternoon and some near sunset, the data is not going to be comparable. And so I think the DO, it has value, but it isn't something that can be tracked really well unless care is taken to take it at the same part of the day throughout all the readings. Same thing goes for pH, because the dissolved oxygen and the carbon dioxide actually affects the pH in a measurable way, you know. So taking pH readings at different times of day is not going to be as comparable. Yeah, Becky?
Curious what the flavor is in terms of frequency of sampling, weekly, daily, monthly?
Um,
I think weekly, Jim?
It is desirable on the lakes, on lakes, to do high frequency of sampling. There's great value to that, depending on the character of the problems that the lake is experiencing. What has happened for the past 30 years is the health department samples on a monthly basis. Now, they do that in order to be able to deal with the number of lakes they have, which is over 90, and their ability to be able to get out. One of the things that it could do is to take one or two lake communities and do a higher volume of sampling. That high frequency that I'm talking about is especially relevant to Paul's Lake, but not necessarily to some of the rest of the lakes, depending on the character of the problems that they are experiencing.
So Jim, what is high frequency? Every hour? Every day of the year?
No,
Is it
no.
once a
Weekly.
week? What is it? What's high frequency?
In terms of dissolved oxygen, there are two types of measurements that go along with doing dissolved oxygen. One is a temperature dissolved oxygen profile. That's done so that you know and understand how the lake is stratifying and what is going on in the epilimnion, metalimnion, and hypolimnion. So that's one type of monitoring strategy. Second type goes along with monitoring around multiple surfaces. In case of Paul's Lake, he's got a polymictic lake, and it doesn't have the same type of stratification that the other lakes in the region have. And so doing surface sampling in multiple spots, it may be highly desirable. Each of the lakes is likely to have the potential for a different type of formula to be able to do the sampling. One of the things that I don't have is I don't know which probes are available.
We have four. We have ORP.
Is it just 4?
Yes,
That's it.
we have just 4. There are others, but we chose these 4.
Okay, and chlorophyll A then is done as a wet chemistry
Chlorophyll A is done with
or
light
fluorescence in the.
fluorescence. Yeah.
Okay, so that's those 4 parameters and then chlorophyll A, which should be helpful. They didn't give you a turbidity probe.
We didn't ask for it because we wanted some of these other ones, and
Okay,
and
well, you
we
can
have set
combine.
we
You
have
can
set
combine Secchi discs
Mhm.
with those other sorts of things, and come up with a program, essentially a program to monitor lake. But what would be needed is an individual prescription for each of the specific lakes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
gotta
think-
be simple enough and fast enough, but overall, we need accurate results. And
Yeah, Becky, have you had an opportunity to go through the videos for the?
No, and I probably will not. I'm just, this is not my area of expertise. I guess I would be willing to watch some overview. I've worked with chemists. I have great respect for chemists. It will not be me using any of these machines or doing any of this work, probably. I would love to write marketing materials. I'd love to help make sure the training is really effective. I'd love to be.
Well, if the training is to be effective, what I'd encourage you to do is to look at 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah,
Not for purposes of getting complete understanding of the stuff, just to understand what people have presented.
I already
as-
think that it's
as
overwhelming
This is
for
what you
most
need to,
people, right?
this is what you need to know to be able to run this equipment.
And I think I'm going to be really transparent. You know, I think we need to appreciate the equipment that we have. But if people have to become a PhD scientist in order to use it, then I think that really narrows who we can engage with. And I'm being a little, you know, maybe they don't have to have a PhD, but like you said, I think that's one of the things with a user experience approach. I don't know if you guys have heard of that field of user experience. You know, we want this to be a delightful experience. We want it to be a positive experience. We don't want people to feel uncomfortable, shamed, stupid, you know, ignorant, you know, all the negative feelings. We want them to learn that their lake is really wonderful and we have some new equipment and Lake County Lake Lovers is here to help. And so I think this is one of the flavors, if you think of ice cream flavors, we're trying to experiment with, which is we just want lakes and lake management groups that are really open to partnering with us, and we'll come in with the experts. Or in order to partner with us, we really need you to find that science teacher, that retired chemist human that's going to take this really deep dive and become a local expert. And I don't know if we know on that spectrum, maybe it'll be different. You know, maybe as we think through this, we want to think about, and I don't know, you guys are the experts, an easy lake versus a medium lake versus a really complicated lake. And maybe no 2 lakes are even able to be bucketed. But I'm willing, I'll tell you right now, the stuff, I don't like equipment. And I can watch it, but if it's very, I heard you say there is, I wrote it down because I thought it was, there's an awful lot of technical jargon in the videos. You know, to me, technical jargon, I just start to go la, 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 and I want somebody to come alongside and just explain it in plain English.
It's an example of something to take
Yeah.
the materials out
Mhm.
of, this is relatively complicated equipment.
Yeah,
Take the materials out of those videos and out of the things, and then translate it so that it is usable for people is an
that's
educational,
yeah.
it's an educational process, and it will not be easy.
And it may not be appropriate for it to be understandable to people like me, right? It might need to be from the experts to the medium-high volunteers, and that's what this equipment is for. I'm the Secchi disc kind of a person. I can handle, I lower it down till I can't see whatever I'm supposed to look for. I can measure the length. I get that. That's good with me. I can put a pH strip in a little thing of water. That's good with me.
Yeah, pH strip is not going to be useful.
Those are my types of things.
Mhm.
Getting to be the expert on the equipment, I don't know. If I have to, I'll learn it. I'll make myself do it, but it
I'll-
doesn't make me get excited at all.
But I think, for
I'll-
example, the phosphorus measurements are relatively simple. I mean, it's, put your sample in there, maybe we filter it before you put it in a little glass tube. And then you put 2 tablets in there, squish them up with a little swisher. Put
I
it in
like
the
squishers.
couple buttons, there's the result. And then what I would like to see is then they take another bottle and they pour in a reference standard that should come out to exactly 1.000 and put the tablets in there, put them in and write down that result. And if it's way off of 1.0, that means they did something wrong and none of the results are any good.
So that's your sanity check,
A sanity.
the reference. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think as you guys talk through this, you could start to stratify. We think this is reasonable for the average bear.
Mhm.
And we think this is going to take the high touch type of, citizen scientist to, the specialist. And as we think through, what we put together, we should make it attractive, so that people stick with, because you wouldn't want them just to measure once or twice. You'd want them to stick with it. And
Right.
I guess what I'm hearing is that every
Right.
lake would have a customized lake measuring plan developed for that lake.
Yes.
There's no Goldilocks, small, medium, large type of things here. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
okay.
Yeah.
And it should be simple enough, even though the instruments can, like that 9800 can measure probably 30 different things. But I only see it measuring one thing, phosphorus. It
Mhm.
can be a lot of other things, but in most cases, we don't need all that other stuff.
Mhm.
And the Pro DSS, it can measure, it's got 4 probes, but it can measure some other things besides just 4, because some of them are combinations. And but that doesn't mean every lake needs to measure all of those things. They could, okay, we're just going to measure, chlorophyll on our lake, and we're not going to pay attention to the other probes. Or maybe, I just worry that if I'm always reminded that no data, the absence of data is better than incorrect data, because you make bad
Interesting.
decisions.
Yeah, Gloria Charland, who's been measuring Long Lake for a long time and is also this year Club HABS expert, has just joined us on the call. And we did have a specific agenda for everyone to have insight on what's going on, with these tools. And I put that in the chat group. And I'm wondering if Gloria, if you had any questions or comments before we go on. I just thought Paul could run through those 4 topics just so that everyone has the same lay of the land that we'll share this with. But Gloria, great to have you here. Any thoughts, comments, or
No,
desires?
just got here, hoping to learn with everyone else.
Yeah, and it was so great to have you at the year-end reception and to know the good work that you're doing and that you were excited about seeing these tools here. So Paul was just saying what the unique aspect of the Pro DSS and then the 9800. So Paul, maybe if you could just repeat, why we use this one with the multi-probes.
Right. Okay, so the multi-probe, we've got 4 sensors on it. One sensor is dissolved oxygen and one sensor is pH. And the pH sensor also does what they call ORP, which is oxidation reduction potential. And then another probe is chlorophyll A, as well as a measurement of toxic HAB. So it's a fluorescence probe, and so it's shooting different colors of light, and it's looking at the fluorescence and the ratio of these different wavelengths to get a sense if that chlorophyll, if that blue-green algae, cyanobacteria is the toxic type or not. So that's a very interesting sensor on that thing. And then it's also got GPS and depth built into it, temperature, of course, time. Yep, Gloria.
is it just testing for color, right? I mean, it's not testing for toxicity or
It-
determining the type of cyanobacteria.
It kind of is testing for the kind of cyanobacteria. It's not just testing for color. It's 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 emitting a certain color, and then it's looking for a different color, and that's a fluorescence property, and it's doing that at 2 different wavelengths, and those are tuned in so that chlorophyll A will register, and also the type of
Blue, green.
yeah, the type of blue. Now,
It's phycocyanin.
that's it. I couldn't think
It's
of it.
chlorophyll A and phycocyanin.
That's it. And
So-
so the fluorescence is tuned to those 2 molecules so that it can measure the abundance of those 2 molecules. And by measuring the phycocyanin, whatever, I don't know the word, it can indicate a HAB toxin.
No,
One thing, Gloria, that might be helpful for the group that we're talking with here is you might explain what your experience has been with the VLMP program over time and how important the monitoring for your lake has been as a consequence of doing some of this type of testing.
The VLMP, the former Volunteer Lake Monitoring Program, yes, so Long Lake has been involved in that for many years as well as many of the other lakes in the area. This is all it's testing for? Dissolved oxygen conductivity?
No, it's more than what would normally be part of the full-blown VLMP program. So it's a little different. There is DO temperature profiles that would be created. So the probe would be used for that purpose. The other testing is similar to some of the HAWK stuff, but is somewhat different. And so chlorophyll and phosphorus, there's a phosphorus element to the kits. And so it measures what could best be termed free phosphorus. So there is no filtering involved, but rather gives you an immediate value for what could be called as free phosphorus. Similar to soluble reactive phosphorus, but not quite the same.
I'm hearing you say that, Jim, but I'm not seeing it here in
So
the
2 different instruments. We've got the Pro DSS, which is the one with the 4 sensors in it. That's this one here. And so inside that sleeve, there's 4 probes inside there. And then and that's the one that does the chlorophyll and that word I can't pronounce, and dissolved oxygen. Physocyanin. And then the one, if you scroll down a little bit, Mary, this one's a photometer, and these little test tubes on the right here, that's where you put your water sample in there. You put a couple of tablets in there, crush them up, you stick them in the meter, and it's going to shine a light beam through there of the right color, and chemical reaction is going to occur, and the amount of phosphorus is going to be proportional to the amount of blue color in the test tube, and the meter will measure that blue color extremely accurately and report it out as a concentration of phosphorus. So that one we would use for phosphorus, and the other one we would use for the other tests. This one we would do a bunch of tests. The other one below would be, I think, just phosphorus. It has the capability to do other things like alkalinity, and copper and iron and many other things. But my personal interest in our lake, and I think in most of the lakes in Lake County, would be phosphorus, which is our biggest pollutant that gives, causes all our troubles, or most of our troubles.
Yeah, so great. So Paul, that's what the true instruments do. Now, how do you suggested a process for using scientists to ensure the quality of data collection and just calibration. Could you talk through that?
Sure. I think there needs to be a training component, trained by a core group of maybe 5 or 7 people, that have lab experience, that have science background, and that understand, calibration and reference standards and things like that. And then, when the citizen scientists are actually doing the test, at least at first, they need to be accompanied by at least one of these, core people, to make sure they're doing the test right. And then they're, for example, at Lake County Health Department, they do a 6-point calibration curve with every sample run. We would do a 2-point, right? We would do a blank and maybe 1 reference standard. And that would give us confidence that, the result is accurate. And we definitely want accurate data. We don't need to calibrate, I think, our Pro DSS every time it's used or anything like that. That's just overkill. But it should be calibrated maybe once a week. And they have a thing they call
Well, it probably doesn't need that frequency of
not even
calibration
once a week.
for the
Okay.
probe. It's more likely maybe once a month.
Okay, once a month. We have a batch of stuff called that Xylem puts out, that YSI puts out, called a confidence solution. And so it's a mixture. So you put that 4-sensor probe into this solution called the confidence solution, and you say take a reading, and now that confidence solution is a reference standard of multiple things at the same time. So it's a pH reference standard, it's a conductivity reference standard, it's several other reference standards there. So it just it gives you like confidence that, oh, it's still within calibration. I don't need to recalibrate it. It's still within calibration. So that would be part of the process too. I think some of the unknowns are, to me, of the program are, how do we get these citizen science volunteers? Well, we need the core group first, right? And then we get the citizen science volunteers, and then where do we store the data? That's a big unknown. And I think we need to use this winter to get all that worked out, because we should be starting to take data in March.
Yeah, and so I'm just putting in the chat here, Diana Bush, Robin O'Connor, and Sandy Likis have all expressed interest, as has Jerry from Loch Lomond, in being part of this the teacher, the scientist, expert on this equipment. So I think we have those 4, plus potentially you, Gloria, and Jim, and you, Paul. So we may have enough there if we do confirm their commitment. And I know for sure Sandy has, but Becky, go ahead.
I think that we could come up with where we store the data. It could be a simple spreadsheet, and it would be transparent, but it would be a starting place. But what I'm hearing is that every lake is going to have this unique, customized approach, perhaps. So the data sheet then would be very different per lake. Paul and I were emailing about this, and I'll just say this for the sake of the meeting. I think you can measure till the cows come home, but you need to do something with the measurements to change the health of the lake, right? We can measure and measure and measure and measure, but that's not changing the health of the lake. So I would love to bring, what are we going to do with all the measurements? How does that help us get a lake healthier?
Of all the people that have had experience with that, it's Gloria and Gloria's group.
Wonderful.
So
Here, Gloria.
we need what we all need are measurements of our lakes, nutrients, especially. One season of testing is not going to give you a definitive description of your lake's health or unhealth, because there's so many variables, like weather. But over, what would you say, Jim, 4 or 5 years, you can have a real good sense of what's going on with your lake. And as you start to do best management practices that you're implementing in order to reduce your nutrient volume, you can start to see if that is happening. But that's not going to happen overnight either. It's, so
Do you
for
think it
example,
takes
if,
30 years?
I'm just saying, suppose
No.
you, one of your best management practices, you need to do is a stream bank stabilization. So you get a grant and you stabilize this one stream bank, and now you run out with your tester and test the water. It's still not, it's not going to be like that
Instant, right, right.
because of the weather
There's,
and all the variables.
there's kind of a rule of thumb relative to how often you need to pull together annual lake data. And in general, it goes between 5 and 7 years before it's reasonable to identify trending. That doesn't mean that you're in between in terms of those earlier years. You can't do things that will have a measurable positive aid for specific lakes. Paul's Lake has got a significant problem. The monitoring will be very important for being able to come up with an identified in-lake solutions.
Especially like before and after treatments, like we're planning on doing some kind of phosphorus binding treatments this year, doing a phosphorus measurement immediately before the treatment, and then maybe 48 hours after the treatment. I think those are gonna, be very interesting. And it's like, okay, did we make a dent? Do we need to do this 100 times, or do we need to do it 5 times? And
Well, and then as you monitor that phosphorus level over the next few years, you'll see how effective it was.
mhm.
Yeah, and right, do you need to do it every year? Do you need to do it every 10 years?
So just reflecting, one of the questions Paul raised was, I don't know how we're going to get the citizen science volunteers. Asking someone to do, I'm going to make this up, weekly measurements from March till November.
Yeah.
Don't go on vacation, don't be out of town. You got to commit, let's say it takes an hour to do the measurements. I don't know what it's going to take, right?
I think
That's a really giant ask. And then multiply that. I need you to keep doing that every March to November for 7 years before we're able to give you any direction or guidance or see any trend lines. I'm not sure that that's the size of the package we should sell. Maybe we say, is your lake planning to do any type of intervention? Maybe you could partner with our core group and we could help you measure before and after. So I'm not trying to simplify, but I am just trying to recognize that people have a really busy life and short attention spans, and you don't want to set yourself up for, it's the 3 of you that are going out and now measuring however many lakes every week because the people have gotten distracted. So
One of the other things that you need to be aware of, what both Paul and myself have done, is we've gone to the health department and have been talking with them about dramatically increasing their ability to do nutrient sampling. To do that, they're going to need some different machinery. But the bottom line is they do the testing in a way that is defensible. And some of the other small scale types of things, Gloria's got experience with that, are not nearly as dependable and as precise as they need to be in order to be able to have a long-term and permanent record. So we need to upscale the ability of the health department to do much, much greater numbers of nutrient sampling. They need to do that. They had what has happened recently is a scathing report from Dr. Burkholder on work that was being done for the Des Plaines drainage. And what she successfully pointed out is they didn't have anywhere near the data they needed to be able to properly model that stream system. So the health department needs a hand up in a professional way. In the meantime, doing the sorts of things that we're talking about here and getting people familiar with their lake community by doing some of this monitoring is highly desirable. It's bringing them back into the business of focusing on their lake and doing the things that they need to do to come to an understanding of what's going on.
And
Got one
why,
thing on
uh,
that? Just one moment, if you wouldn't mind. So Jim and I met with Alana and Monica, the lab supervisor over there at the Lake County Health Department. And they supported the idea of a split sample. So we would, some of our samples as part of our Lake Lovers group and this monitoring with the core group and the citizen science and all that, occasionally we would take a sample and we would split that sample, and half of it would go to the Lake County Health Department. They would analyze it, we would analyze it ourselves, and we would compare the results. That would be part of our quality assurance, aside from the reference standards that I talked about earlier.
Paul, would they do that for free?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what you got out of it, Jim, right? That's free.
Free is a relative term.
But maybe it's not, but if it's not free, it's like $20 a sample or something like that.
Yeah.
why, I know sampling every week is a very good idea. Sampling 24/7 is perfect, but with volunteers, why aren't you just considering a once a month sampling?
Because of weather. I
And
guess.
It's not a this or that. In some lakes, doing what has been done for the past 40 years, which is monthly sampling, might be reasonable. In Paul's particular case, it's not. And for other lakes in Lake County, it is highly desirable to do some of the same things as we did with Long Lake.
Yeah, and having worked with citizen scientists, yeah, everybody wants to come out one time and use the equipment and get their picture taken, and very hard to get week after week. Or Jim and I tried to do a stormwater event team. So we're only talking like 3 or 4 times over the summer, and we don't know when we're gonna have the storm, so we've got a list of people, and by golly, no, the rain is pouring, and oh no, I'm going out for breakfast. I just yeah.
Maybe we should take this equipment and focus on Long Lake and Countryside Lake in 2025. And keep it at that, right?
I think, can we add Loch Lomond and Butler Lake? Because I think, and St. Mary's, this stream of 3, maybe I could be involved, or Jennifer Kahn or someone. I
They
think
have volunteers that want to do it.
Yeah, they do at Butler
Well,
Lake, I mean, with the high school.
Not only that, but Gloria's group has got dissolved oxygen meters and the equipment to do a lot of the work. And and she also has USGS busy working on her lake.
So Gloria, has your lake gotten better?
Anecdotally, yes.
But you don't believe that it is?
Um,
You can't tell.
it's an ecosystem. There are so many variables. But getting better, here we measure that in the number of harmful algal blooms. And yeah, they're going down in recent years. We could have a full lake bloom half the summer next year. I mean,
So it doesn't mean anything.
I mean,
I don't mean to be pessimistic. I'm just being the novice
if we keep seeing
outsider
this
asking questions.
over years, yeah, and it may not have been anything we've done, but a change in the ecosystem. And it could come back. It's
So then devil's advocate, forgive me, because I know you guys are all passionate about this. Why measure?
because we're scientists.
My measure is to determine the cause so that we're attacking the right target.
I get that, but are we? Do we have any success story we measured for 7 years? We figured out a target that changes every week, maybe, and then we mitigated at least one of them. but we're still not sure that it got better. Hopefully the
I-
storyline doesn't go like that.
If you have got, I would start implementing best management practices immediately, not take
Wait
samples
7
for
years.
7 years.
Okay. Yeah. Because really, I would love to think that Lake County Lake Lovers, well, let me just start. When I heard the health department, Alana say, you know, we'll build you a plan or we'll do our assessment, but then it's up to you to figure out what to do. A lake, you know, a homeowners association or whomever, and then give it 30 years. I just thought, wow, you know, there's like whole generations of kids that maybe aren't swimming in the beach, right? Because 30 years is a generation or more, right? And could we do anything better than a 30-year journey? Could our little band of people and a couple pieces of equipment make any kind of a difference? Maybe we can't. You know, if we see that we got lots of phosphorus and there's farms, is there any kind of strategy to go sit down over coffee with whatever farmers that might be influencing this? Or if we think it's that and have a conversation.
What watershed are you in?
Oh, I'm not in anything. I live in Libertyville. I'm not on a lake. I'm
Well,
just interested in helping people work together to make
you're
things.
if you're in Libertyville, the lakes in Libertyville are in the Des Plaines River watershed. And there is a watershed-based plan for the Des Plaines River watershed. And you could look in there,
Yeah.
and there's the layout of the best management practices that should be happening to improve
And
the
are they
lake.
happening? Do you think?
I'm not in your watershed.
Yeah, and I know we can zoom in on finding somebody to go measure every week or whatever the frequency is and doing whatever the tests are and putting it in whatever spreadsheet. And I get that that's valuable, but really I would love to use that to help either shine a spotlight on a problem or take the next action steps so that we see change. I don't
those
know. Maybe
action
it's
steps,
impossible. It's a living
those-
ecosystem and it's always in a state of flux.
that list of that action plan is in the watershed-based plan. Take a look at it.
Okay.
Um,
And it's clear who's responsible for those actions, right?
no,
Oh,
no, the watershed-based plan is produced by, well, often by Lake County Stormwater Management, other times by a citizen group. And many times the whole plan gets done and sits on a shelf. If you don't have an active citizen group, that's gonna work and apply.
forgive my ignorance. Why does anyone build those plans then? That's totally silly.
There's a long history of just exactly what you're saying, Becky. And the whole business, certainly on my side, one of the biggest things that in the latter part of my career that I've been really active in is to try and make certain that this work gets done on lakes and that activities are done to try and improve them. I don't disagree with you, and
Yeah, and I don't mean to be negative. I'm not trying to be snarky. I just am thinking
we know.
if we could put our
Mm.
energy, maybe our energy is to try to build ownership of action plans already built or to I don't know. I'm very curious to try to figure out our precious little bit of energy and
There are historic data that exist.
Yeah, I
On,
remember you presented on all that citizen science data that we had
there's
thousands of people or
historic
hundreds of
data
lakes.
that exists on many of the lakes, a large number of the lakes in Lake County. And that's a starting point for identifying types of problems that individual lake communities have. The folks from the health department have found some incredible turnarounds by doing fish management.
Yeah, the carp, right?
By getting rid of the carp. And that has made a dramatic difference in some of the lakes that they're looking at. That has to play out, however. You have to see it over a longer run. So you need to let a couple of years go by and see what is transpiring in those particular lake communities.
Couldn't we have a yes and?
That's an example of one of the things that makes lake management difficult. You're not dealing with one thing. You're dealing with lots of
variables. Yeah.
Lots of variables that at any one time could be significant in terms of the performance of that lake community.
I know Gloria wants to talk and Paul wants to talk. Gloria, why don't you go next?
Why you shouldn't have to.
So I agree, Becky, it's very frustrating. I live in a lake full of harmful algal blooms. I breathe toxic substances all summer long. My lake is highly impaired for phosphorus. It's sitting in the, I did not do any of this to my lake, yet it's falling on me, an unpaid volunteer, to fix my lake. What you're talking about is policy change. I was at the National Monitoring Conference last spring, 2 springs ago. And so, the Clean Water Act requires the state to produce a TMDL, total maximum daily load report, for an impaired water body. And this TMDL, which we have one up here for the Upper Fox River, delineates where the problems are coming from and what needs to be fixed. And then it sits on a shelf. There are states that once they have produced a TMDL, they require that state to now have a TMDL implementation plan, and they have state employees that work on implementing it. We need policy changes so that it's not just us retired volunteers.
Maybe that's an area
The
we should
weight
be
of the water
considering.
quality falling on our shoulders. It's stupid. Right.
I've got something else. So, among the things that these sensors can do, one of them is a conductivity sensor. And there was a report done by a group in Michigan. They had a 65,000 acre lake. And they had a lot of septic systems that led right into the lake, right? Or on shoreline properties. They had some volunteers with their conductivity meter, and soon after a rainfall, they went with a canoe all along the shoreline and took conductivity measurements, and they used that to identify possible or probable even septic system failures. And then they turned that over to other members of their volunteer group to confront those people, or I don't know, confront's probably the wrong word, but to counsel them to, repair their septic system. And our lake, Countryside Lake, has about 1/3 of our shoreline properties that have septic systems. And that would be one thing I hope to do in 2025 with the Pro DSS meter, is to use that conductivity meter and going along those properties that I know are on septic systems and see if it can give a red flag, this one might be the problem.
And so to me, that sounds like a very cause and effect.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even though I hear you, it's a living ecosystem, there's a zillion variables, possibly you don't know 100%, but there could be a high correlation that the conductivity or whatever is going to look like this or that, and that could lead to suspicion that let's get someone out here to test your septic system. And if you get enough pressure or influence or attaboys, because it's always nice to stroke egos than it is to lead with a big stick, right? To influence the change, cleaning up even half of those septic systems, if there's any problems, could improve what's happening in your lake. And you won't have to wait 20 years or 30 years, right? And so maybe
you're talking about diagnostic use of
right. Yeah,
that,
to me that
that
feels more
applies.
satisfying than just saying, gosh, we're going to wait for some magic fairy to change the policies.
But if you found all the leaky septic systems and unleaked them,
Plug them.
you're not improving the water quality. You're just discontinuing that source of pollution and making the lake not get worse from that particular area, which, yes, of course, has tremendous value.
Right. Well,
But
maybe it's a place to start or whatever.
We got the septic systems now. Now we don't have harmful algal blooms.
No, but
water.
Maybe we could come up with, here's the top 10 things that we typically see, if there even is such a thing. Maybe it's the top 1,000. I don't know. It does feel rather overwhelming.
The watershed-based plan, the BMPs are rated in order of priority. And read that first instead of, beating the bushes. I wonder what the top 10 priorities are when there is a watershed-based plan.
Yeah, I'm just aware we're at time. I want to make sure Paul got what he needed. And I just had one question, Gloria, because you have these and also Grace Lake, other places have, these urgent algae blooms, and you don't have the answer on what they're at. Would this the DSS multi-probe allow for us to see the phycocyanin? Would that bring enough insight beyond what you currently have to allow for action? Or just resolution, peace of mind, I guess, clarification that it exists? Could that probe?
We have a harmful algal bloom. And yes, the phycocyanin would give us. So cyanobacteria has been around since before dinosaurs. It is a normal part of a healthy ecosystem. The problem is too much of it, kind of like a yeast infection. Like we all have yeast growing in our mouths, but you can get a yeast infection. Now you've got too much yeast in your mouth. The phycocyanin could reveal more cyanobacteria that is not actually at a bloom stage. A bloom stage would be a visible change in the color of water. But no, I know I got cyanobacteria. I don't need to know, oh, I got a little bit today and a little bit more tomorrow, and oh, now I have a bloom. I need to, we measure our lake monthly. What we need is stream monitoring. And we need stream monitoring mostly for phosphorus, nitrogen, and total suspended solids. And I would also like to start doing stream monitoring, and Jim is very big on this for stream health. So like macroinvertebrates. So, how healthy of an ecosystem have we got in those feeder streams coming into the lake? That's another indicator of more of an ecosystem
Yeah,
indicator, not just a chemical.
right.
And I would make the case that as Gloria monitors her lake for cyanobacteria toxicity, that is an improvement. She's cluing in the local folks, giving them an opportunity to use the lake or not use the lake based on the information that she gives out in a widespread sort of way. That's one improvement that she has there. There are changes, Gloria, from the time that I've taken a look at 40 years ago for some of the load allocations to your lake. So there are reductions that are going on that have happened for your lake. They're doing the beaver stuff. While I'm not happy of what it does to some of the local streams, actually has benefits downstream for your lake in terms of intercepting total suspended solids and phosphorus.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see them too widespread. And so you are getting improvements, and that's something that should be acknowledged.
Just a side note, Mary, we should have the Illinois Beaver Alliance come out and do a webinar for the Lake County lake lovers to talk about beavers and what they're doing, how they can help improve lake quality.
Yeah, Paul and I were just talking about.
Only if you allow me to talk as well.
Well, Gloria convinced me that beavers are probably the best investment you could have, because rather than paying a $300,000 for an engineering firm to create this dam and filtration, you can have a beaver and you don't need the permitting program. You don't need the plan. They just get right to work.
Yeah, and they are, anytime you want, I can take out and show you, but
that was so cool.
Beaver dams are just huge sediment settling operations.
They slow down the water, prevent the flooding, some of it. Yeah, very interesting. But anyway, I think
there's benefits. There's also significant downsides, in-stream, downstream, downside.
I was just looking at my
Those two
notes about
things
this. I wanted to make sure we covered on this meeting. And the one thing I see that we didn't talk about was, two things. One was the idea of the library of things. So I went to Fremont Library, and they have a library of things where you can rent, you can, like a book, and you can take out a watt meter where it tells you how much energy your television is using. And so it's an energy saving concept, right? They might have had one where it's a infrared camera where you can look for like heat losses in your insulation. And maybe this phosphorus meter, the 9800, the YSI 9800, we have two of those, right? Maybe one of those becomes at the library to be loaned out through the library's mechanism for phosphorus measurements. But there would still need to be some training on that, but maybe that's where one of those meters go. Now, that was one thing I wanted to get a sense of what everybody thought of that. And the other one is using these meters, are we going to get any negative thoughts from people like Pace Laboratories or some of the treatment contractors like McLeod or ILM or some of the other ones? It's like, hey, you're taking our business and it's, you know, you're doing it for free and, you know, this is how we make our living. Are those like realistic concerns or not?
I wouldn't worry about them. I don't know.
Well, if they're out there making their living, then why do we think this is so great that we got this stuff? Not everyone maybe can afford.
Not everybody can afford it.
Water testing is expensive.
I would deal with that when it became a loud roar.
Mhm.
So maybe we could influence them to start joining us and doing some pro bono work.
Yeah, I don't like ILM. No, I think ILM would be happy that you are finding problems with your lake, that you could eventually get a grant and hire them to do big jobs for them,
Right, yeah.
not little water testing.
What
I
about
think
the Library of Things?
I love
I
that
don't-
idea.
I like the idea of it being in a library, but I don't like the idea of just some high school kid taking it out and doing a science project. It'd be nice to, you know, like we've got a little card that we've been trained, or there's a little list on who's gone through the training, or
Yeah,
I would encourage Paul to be talking with College of Lake County
Okay.
to see if they can do the sorts of training and associated with the use of these sorts of things, and identify some specific lakes, some target lakes to do it with.
Another iteration on that concept, Paul, was the idea of sitting in Fremont Library on a Saturday and inviting lakes to bring in their vials, clean vials of lake water to test for phosphorus levels. I think you had suggested that.
Right.
And Gloria sounded like that
No,
would be interesting.
it might be a way to get people involved. I don't know that it's gonna be like where somebody's gonna bring their sample once a month and every month. I don't think that would be the goal. It would be to bring their sample. Oh yeah, this is high, or no, you got a really good lake. But then tell them about the program and say, you want to get involved in the program.
is there any
Maybe-
limitation on how many people can use this equipment at one time?
A sample takes about 10 minutes to run.
And do you have to clean it or do anything, or I can dip this thing in 6 different lakes in an hour and that's fine?
It's the Model 9800 is easy to clean. The sample is removed from the lake and put in, so there's no contamination issue. The probe, the DSS probe, the Pro DSS, that one needs a little bit more thought of taking it from lake to lake. So if you're putting it in the lake and then you're going to another lake and you're putting it in that lake, you know, we don't want to be cross-contaminating these lakes. So there's a cleaning procedure. You know, it's easy, but it's still got to be done. And, you know, rinse that off and sort of disinfect it in a way. So
My vibe is that the library concept is something that's in the future, and you see how easy is it to get the average bear, citizen, scientist, interested person to really become proficient and to perform the care and upkeep the way you would think that they should. And then all you need is one of you to go check it out and you discover that it's broken. And then who's responsible, or what would you do then? Does Xylem replace it, or we're just down that? And I don't mean to be negative, but it
cautious.
just seems like it's an expensive piece of, it's not like $100. It's not like it's easy to replace it. It's not like I would never be the right person to check it out, no matter how many times I watch the video, no offense, but it's just, this is not my thing. So we might just And, you know, I check it out. Let's say I'm going to do something over the weekend. So I pick it up Friday and I get to it finally on Monday or Tuesday and then I return it. Well, if it only takes an hour, think of all the other hours that I've had it at my house now where nobody else can use it. So if we only need 2 people to use it once a month, then that works. But if we need 30 people to use it and each person gets 24 hours, then this leapfrogging and cleaning and ensuring quality is going to be a much tighter thing. And so maybe we close with this idea that I would love to ask you experts 2 questions. If you had a perfect world and everything would be picture perfect, what would that be? And then if you had the bare bones war zone, you could just do the nitty grittiest minimum stuff, what would that be? If we set the boundary on what those 2 extremes are, I think that could help us land with trying to use this for good and figuring out, you know, do we really need to find people like Paul with a chemist background that cares about his lake, who lives on the lake, who's already going to be measuring anyways? Or we really could recruit somebody off the street that has a little bit of science background and turn them into something useful with this equipment. You know, I don't know. You guys know, but it does scare me a little bit, to be really honest, to say, wow, we need someone to do, because Gloria, I think you're spot on. Everyone's excited to get the picture, to learn it, and they think they want to do it, but it's a whole nother thing to really go out there and do it in the good weather, the bad weather, the ugly weather, give up vacation, etc. Find a way to keep going. And so then what's the minimum? Maybe we're recruiting people at a bare minimum, you have to be able to commit to X, but if you do a little bit extra, that's gravy. So this was really fun to talk to all of you. Thank you for being passionate and caring so much. It's really inspiring, and I think we should stay pretty open, and it'd be fun to watch you teach others and to see where do people get stuck and you know, what this might look like. So I don't know yet.
You raised some very good questions, Becky.
Good. I'm glad. You guys raise really wonderful things. I just think, oh, our poor lakes have no hope. If you've been measuring for 30 years and there's still problems because it's a living ecosystem, it's constantly evolving. Oh my goodness. Like,
Nobody's responsible for helping our lakes. No one.
right. We're the magic fairies.
Volunteers.
Yeah.
And
So
that
what could that look like?
volunteers-
Should we try to get as many people on one lake to get involved? Or is it better to get 3 people on a set of lakes because they talk to each other, the water's flowing between them? Or we don't need that? Do we want to play with
I'll tell you, I've got enough to
different
know
types
on
of
my lake,
extremes, different
my
examples of
watershed.
problems? I don't know. You guys know all this stuff. So again, what's your perfect and what's your bare bones minimum? And maybe we can collect that somehow and compare and see what's common across what you guys know and think. Because I'm a believer that if we could try to do the bare minimum, that maybe we have a better chance of succeeding rather than the giant enchilada. Really, I mean, especially when volunteers are involved. It's, you know, you're the 3 that are here tonight, giving up whatever Thursday night time to talk about this because you're really, really passionate and you've devoted a big part of your life to it. So, and I made some notes. The fact, Jim, that Gloria can tell her lake friends what the level of harmful algae blooms, whatever that is that you're communicating. Maybe it's just sounding the alarm. Don't let your dogs go in. Don't go swimming. I know something before the health department knows it, right? You become that voice of truth, and maybe that's good. So anyways, maybe we see
But it does, it
Go ahead.
does keep our dogs and our children safe. But the other thing is that it keeps people aware that, yes, this is a problem.
Yeah, banging that drum over and over. And what if we made that more visible, right? You know, maybe there's, I don't know, a dead rubber chicken that hangs on the lake beach sign every time there's a lake closure, and we show it over time because, you know, we have very short-term memories. So I don't know. I don't know what the answers are, but Paul, thank you for all the effort, and Jim and Gloria, and it's exciting. And maybe we just say, for starters, the 3 of you are using this equipment starting in March on whatever lake you want to pick. And, you know, if we can get another group of people involved, maybe we experiment for a while and see.
I will repeat that my belief is that it's exceptionally important to get the College of Lake County in.
I wrote that down, Jim. I'm gonna reach out to them.
Yeah, that's a place that's got resources that are substantial. It's a place that has got folks that are familiar with some of the science. And for years and years, they have not had an active program to directly help or manage lakes.
And maybe, Jim, you have names of people, not just
In Lake
College of Lake County.
County, we should have we should have programs at the Lake County College.
And by the way, Gloria's Lake is exceptional. It's exceptional because they have her. That's one item. But they have a lot of other people that have helped to pitch in. And it would not be as good a process were it not for those other people that are there and are pitching in
Helping.
as well. So it's a special lake community.
Does it feel special, Gloria?
I hope so.
We have a handful of volunteers, but most lakes don't have the whole handful.
Totally does. You have such a great group with Craig and Susan and Mary, and yes, so
Getting smaller, not expanding.
Handful,
I think
small,
we got 3.
like 5 people that actually do stuff. But that's 5. You know, there's plenty of lakes where there's no one, or there's, one person.
Trying to
beating
do
it.
it all. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Another thing they've done that's really good is that you guys have sat in at those SMC meetings and any county meetings to really be intimate and be listening for what they're offering and be good partners. So I think you guys are a model as far as community engagement, and Gloria, that's your initiative that you are consistent and have a monthly meeting with your Manitou Creek group. And she makes that open, Becky. Before you came on, Gloria, we were talking about what lake groups have open meetings that others could learn from. And your meeting is exceptional. And I know Paul also has one, but I defer to all of you. Paul, did you cover everything? I think you did everything you wanted. So
Yep.
Well, looking forward to learning more. I gotta go. I got a phone call here.
Yeah.
great. So January 16th, put it on your calendar. That's our next meeting. We'll have a citizen science thing right before our 7 p.m. So at 6 o'clock, we'll do this update, right, Paul? I think.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Everyone
folks.
have a lovely holiday and a happy new year.
Cool. And
Post some of the
congratulations on the
stuff
house sale.
and we'll be back in touch. Love you guys.
Thanks, Paul. All
Thanks.
right.
Everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. via Zoom right before our January 16th meeting, or right after, if Paul's going to lead that. But do you have thoughts? Because I'm really here to facilitate, not to lead the
Oh,
lake
it's-
lovers.
we